had a call, and you just called me. We hadn't talked for a little bit because of 24-hour bus from Berlin to Kiev. And you said, "Hey, Justin, by the way, I won't be around for the next couple of days. I'm going to the forest with an axe and no phone." I remember in the summer of 2 years ago, we were working on social media things and editing videos and things like this. And you called me and you were in the hospital with a broken left hand. And you will never tell this story yourself because you're humble, right? And I'm like, what the fuck happened, man? But I think the more that you have a healthy relationship to death and view it as a natural thing that is part of life in Taoist philosophy, then I think you really will start to live more. Wait, can you talk about this thing we talked about before we started even recording, which is the idea of going to easy mode countries when things are not going well where you are, South America, Thailand, things like this.
It's not even about. I even seen it in Romania. There is. Well, it's not just in Romania. It's around the world. But the last time I've been kind of almost traumatized by realizing that people from the, let's say, first world countries, they go to the smaller countries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quote unquote artists from, I don't want to call the industries. I know it's enough, right? They go into the small countries, they get success, and they start consider themselves artists. But they nobody in their own country. And that's what I don't understand. For me, it's traumatizing experience. I just really believe that its approach when people take art as something that will fulfill any needs of validation in any areas of whatsoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think ultimately, especially if you're an artist, right, you need to you creating something for the humanity, right? You don't really care about that nation or that nation being recognized there, not being recognized there. You want to create something that ultimately will bring people God's experience, right?
What are you making art for? To be famous and paid, or for the spirit and helping people in a sense, right? Stan?
Yeah. I think both of these approaches still comes from our ego,
Mm-hmm.
I think as the artist, you need to be humble enough to accept the fact that you are just the brush or the pencil or the pen in the hands of God. You just attuned.
Yeah.
Tolstoy used to say, we don't need to learn anything. We just need to remember that, right? So Tolstoy's idea in his philosophical works was that we are reading and exploring some ideas to get cleaner, right? Because we already know everything. We just need to remember that. That's what I believe the greatest art is, to become that perception that can transmute the God's experience to people, right?
Yeah.
I know it's big terms and sounds very spiritual. I'm not a spiritual person, but we can replace this word God to unconsciousness, subconsciousness, universe, experience,
divine, sacred.
yes.
Thing. Yeah.
So in my opinion, the greatest artists, they're very humble, They don't call themselves musicians, painters, writers.
Writers.
I cannot call myself like, I remember one of the girls, she told me like, you're the greatest artist I ever read. And she's a well-read girl, I said, I feel ashamed, to call myself, because these great minds, that I've been inspired and influenced when I was a teenager, right?
Yeah.
How can I dare to call in front of them, seeing their books or their portraits in my room, how can I dare to say that I'm a writer?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I know some of our viewers, and I'm very grateful for that, called me brilliant and etc. I'm very grateful for this. I just wanted to say, it's very humbling experience to me, because I still remember how far I am from the people who influenced me in my teenager years. But I'm very, very grateful to everyone who inspired by anything what comes from my mind to my mouth and then to the podcast.
And you're writing. And subscribe to Stan on Substack, guys. He has a lot of good articles. No, that are beyond the scope of. It's all related, but beyond the scope of even introductory beginner level problems in dating. These are fundamental questions of masculinity and what it means to be a man in this world. And there's one quote that I like: "The men I trust are the ones with scar tissues." Go, you guys go and find it. Maybe we'll put a link in the description below. But so yeah, back to you, Stan. I mean, I think you're too humble, man. Like you're good.
But that's a good idea in the same time, you know. They've been great. I think one of the greatest Italian writers, Umberto Eco, you know, and he was on purpose.
Stan, who?
Umberto
Who?
Eco.
Oh, Umberto Eco. You told me about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was on purpose whenever he been getting money for his books, right, being sold very well. He'd been right away spending all this money on the new books.
That
So
sounds like someone I know, Stan.
he kept himself to read more and more and more and always reminding himself that there is still depth after depth, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's very, very healthy approach. It's very cool approach, you know. In the same, just you know, when I was traumatized the most, I was 15 years old, and I was reading one of the biographies of Nabokov, and they've been said that he used to read 10 books per week. Then he
Mm.
said that he's reading too much, and they let him read only 7 books per week. And I'm like, fuck.
10 books per week?
It's in one week, right? And I was by that time reading maybe like 5 books per month, right? And I was traumatized by that. And that's why I'm trying to be humble, still being humble, right, to myself. Uh, I mean, at the same time, you know, I think this is what guys might get to themselves. If you will put the bar here, right, for yourself, you won't have any competition when you go to the clubs or bars or let's say you on an event, right, and there is many quote unquote successful, rich, influential men, musicians, actors, whatever, right?
Mhm.
How they can compete with you? Your bar is here. Their bar is beyond your shoes.
They're playing basketball and you're playing soccer. It's not even like football, like an American.
I don't even think that it matters what they play, right? In this case, I
Yeah.
think. Well, I want to say why I'm always propagating literature, right? Because first of all, human beings are verbal creatures, right?
Hmm.
Bible starts first was the God, and God was the Word, and Word was the God, right?
Yeah.
What separates us from other creatures, right, and beings on this earth is that we have cognitive function, right? We can talk, right?
And so I'm curious if you can talk about this and maybe relate it to the art of love and dating.
Mm.
But you said to me, if I heard you correctly, that writing is arguably the highest form of art. It's qualitatively different. But what did you mean by that when you said this to me?
Mhm. Well, first of all, uh, literature, especially poetry, right? Because Brodsky used to say it very beautiful way. He said, what writers can do in his novels, most likely he will never gonna recreate the same in poetry, right? But what
Mm.
poet can do in his poetry, he will easily do in the
Ah,
writings, right? And
yeah.
again, poetry is that. What you see on Instagram, they are not poets. They just know how to combine letters, right? They don't even know what is syllabotonics, right? They don't know sizes of the poetry, iamb and fibrachi and etc. Right? If you don't know that, you cannot create poetry. So, in my opinion, poetry passed away to with W.H. Auden. Who? W.H. Auden. Who? So yeah, I think Auden was the last one. No, Brodsky, obviously, right? But in Russia, they still write according to the poet traditions, right? I mean, if you take Bukovsky as the poet, right? As the poet, he was a complete tragedy. He wasn't a talented poet, but his mindset was unique, right? The same with his books, right?
A great novelist.
There is
That's
nothing stylistically interesting. It's the depth of his experience was interesting.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Love
that's
is a dog from hell.
so let's come back to literature and your question. Why and when I say literature, I mean writing, writing novels, writing stories, and poetry all together, right? Or you can separate that, but it's still, in my opinion, the best, the most complicated and the best, and it's apotheos of art, because writing has can include into itself music easily. You can, with words, you can easily describe the music. You can describe the song of birds. You can describe the musician's work, whatever you want, right? You can describe the painting with words. You can describe the sculpture. You can describe the history. You can describe the
Mhm.
philosophy.
Mhm.
Is there is any other art form can replicate that? Never, ever. So basically, why again we coming back to literature? Because with literature everything starts. Greeks, by having myths about Dionysius or Bacchus, they invented theater, right?
Mhm.
When theater was invented, first they've been just reciting the parts of the story of this myth. Then they started to put their music by using some primal musical instruments that we don't even want to call it like this right now, right? After that, obviously, acting skills started to be improved or wanted to be improved. And masks, which is pre-form of paintings and sculptures, right?
Mhm.
This is what also came. But the root of this was literature that already had all the experience, all the myths inside, right? And just to maximize that experience, literature also offered people to have masks, to have music, to have actor skills, and etc.
Yeah.
Well, if you talk about Greeks, but you can take any other civilization, and it all starts with words.
But Stan, let me ask you. So, in a dating and relationship sense,
Uh-huh.
we have to imagine, if we go back far enough, that cavemen used to bang cave women without words, without writing.
Mhm.
So, even still, I forget the quote and who it's by, but writing is still an approximation of something. But as it relates to art form, you still feel like it's the highest form in a sense, right?
Yeah,
Because words have a special quality.
highest form of
But
art.
yeah, very interesting.
But again, what you mentioned, that caveman and cavewoman, they've been banging each other. Yeah, they've been banging each other, but love has another levels, right?
Mhm.
Uh, I think I think it's not difficult to get late with someone. It's more difficult to make someone dreaming, wanting you, and having you in their memories as the most beautiful and the deepest experience that they ever had, right?
Mhm.
And I think art, as any art actually, as the sublimation of sexual energy, it helps to de- develop and unleash this the most, right?
So art as the sublimation
Mm-hmm.
of sexual energies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't talk in Freud's terms right now.
Okay. So let's take that and apply it to meeting a girl. So if art is a sublimation of sexual energy, then it seems like there's a simultaneous blend of when you see a girl you like and you feel something about her compels you, something about her turns you on. You feel it in your spirit, in your heart, in your balls, in your everything. It's simultaneously sacred and profane then, Stan. Because if it's just banging, then we're just animals, right? But if it's just, how to say, divine, it's not embodied. It's abstract in a sense, right? So art has a divine quality to it, is implicit in what you just said, right? Art is a sublimation of sexual energy. And so if we can build on that, then that means that when a man feels desire and his sexual energy, uh, in a way, it is a God-given thing.
Yes.
And we men have shame and guilt about our desires because of society, because of conditioning. And I want to make a comment on schools, Dan, because it sounds like regarding the film director who you mentioned, I forgot his name. It seems like school for these actors and these, at least more formal school or traditional schooling, acting school, pushed them in the wrong direction, away from the vision that he wanted. So he preferred to have students that hadn't gone through school, because, and that's another whole rabbit hole we can get into with education. And is it even a net positive to do it? Are you worse off for having studied things in a certain conformist traditional way than in your own way? In a sense, Stan, this is a much broader discussion, but to apply it to the art of love and seduction style, there is certainly dating advice, to speak very crudely, or books or manuals or frameworks or techniques that need to be unlearned sometimes before a guy can really make progress. And I had this thought earlier, but I didn't have the time to share it, Stan, when you were sharing about art. And I thought of it like dancing, or I thought of it like painting or sculpting or writing. There is a difference between feeling and technique.
Mm-hmm.
And that applies to the art of love as well. You can do the technique perfectly when you're dancing, but you miss the feeling. You can paint the thing with perfect technique, but you miss the spirit and the feeling. And you can write the poetry, right? You follow the format, and it's perfect, like iambic pentameter, but you feel nothing, right? There's a sense of, how do you relate that to the art of love? Like, it's the same as saying it's not what you say that's important, it's how you say it, in a sense, when talking with a woman in the art of love. In a sense, right, Stan? The right, hey, from one guy might mean more than paragraphs, thousands of conversations from the other guy, just because of the quality of the feeling of what was communicated, as opposed to you might say the perfect things, right? But without any feeling, it means nothing. So this technique versus feeling, Stan, how do you make sense of that?
I think I just mentioned maybe 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I mentioned Gauguin.
Yeah.
And his paintings, they technically, I guess, they're not the coolest ones, right? And again, I'm
Yeah.
not a painter, not to talk about that, but I think stylistically, he didn't wrote something extremely revolutionary, but Gauguin itself had very much animalistic energy inside of his works, right?
Mhm.
And I think this is in the great seduction, which is again, might sound very sad to some people, but you need to have this animalistic roots,
Mhm.
to be kind of the beast, but enlightened beast, the beast that understands the social grace, right?
Mhm.
That can easily bend her over, but not in front of her friends, right? In the place when she will feel comfortable enough to do that.
Yeah.
So I think social grace is exactly the form that we discussing here, right? The style, stylistics,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the inner energy, animalistic energy that gives life to and gives formation to any form of art. That's another thing. But it's also, it's not black and white, Jason. Honestly, there is a lot of women and a lot of men who love people who don't have this animalistic and sexual energy. Or these people, they kind of like people who not even nonchalant, but kind of asexual,
Mhm.
And it's answering right away to the question when guys will ask us, well, I was this guy with sexual grace. Yeah, let's call it sexual grace, with social
Sexual growth.
animalistic energy, right? And it didn't
Mhm.
work out. Yes, because there is some of the women and some of the men who traumatized by some previous experiences, and they choosing something safe, familiar, asexual, because usually in this case, stakes are low. So yeah, what I'm trying to say right now, if you talk in general, like let's say having success with 9 out of 10 women, right? You need to
Mhm.
develop that energy that you can create, that you can transform and into sublimation for your art, for your business, and at the same time for your seduction. But it
Yeah.
should be something um, something so strong and and mostly even demonic, maybe.
Well, let me say it differently, Stan. There seems to, if I can try to put words onto it, there seems to be a conqueror's spirit in every single man.
Mm-hmm.
And to be a winner, to be great, to be magnificent. And whether you transmute that into conquest in the business sense, um, conquest, men used to, I think of the Crusades and different ages of the world where men used to go and fight in battles, and there was that drive of micro and macro penetrating into the battlefield, at least taking out. Alex, our friend, was telling me about he had a friend in Norway who his philosophy was if he was one guy fighting a group of five guys, his philosophy was that he would go for the strongest guy that they had, whether he won or lost, and at least take one down with him so that his friends,
Yeah.
uh, if he got the leader, he might win against all five of them, actually,
Mm.
just from pure decisiveness and that balls and that spine that is also a crucial part of masculinity. But you mentioned the animalistic side. And I think if the animalistic side isn't tempered by graciousness, sexual grace, as you said, Stan, and a generosity of spirit, then it's too much. It's like a tiger that is in a house with humans that isn't tamed, like Mike Tyson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember seeing a talk that Zan gave,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about the idea of the warrior's repose, which I'm not sure where that comes from originally. But it's like the man in ancient times stands outside the cave where his wife slash wives slash children slash and his loved ones are, and he fights the saber-toothed tiger. He fights the lions. He fights the wilderness and elements and goes and hunts. Then he comes home and he lays his head down in his woman's lap. And it's not my idea. Give credit where it's due. He's simultaneously this mighty hero, protector, legendary figure, and also a little boy at the same time. So, how do you cultivate that, Stan? You told me that you used to go into the forest in Lithuania and just be with an axe and like raw nature and maybe you were even thinking of leading experiences like that because that is like getting back into the essence of look at us like we're in urban cities ordering food to our place with air conditioning and stuff like this, disconnected from the essence of true of the masculinity that is innate, this animal nature that's within each of us, like man versus wild sort of aspects. And I'm curious if you want to comment on that. And once you explore that part of yourself, I mean, what is talking to a girl after that? Although I have some extra thoughts on that, but hand it to you.
Yeah, I don't know. Have I mentioned it to you even years ago? Years and years ago, when I was struggling with approach anxiety and fear of being rejected and etc. Before forests, it was going into the cemeteries, after the
Wow.
midnight and staying all night till the sunrise. It's that feeling when you because basically maybe that might be very helpful advice to some of the listeners. If you able to stay with all these unpleasant feelings, fears, a lot of sounds, trust me, when you are alone on the cemetery during the night time, right, you will hear every sound. So also you will feel some metaphysical and spiritual fears because we're human beings. And the second part to that, since it's dark, right, and we're always afraid what we cannot control, and there is nothing we can control in the dark. Right, the dark is completely uncontrollable because we don't see
Mhm.
anything, even what we could potentially control.
Mhm.
You will feel a lot of different experiences if you're not shutting yourself down, right, but observing yourself and letting to stay with this. It improves you a lot.
Well, so you weren't telling stories about what you were feeling. You were just feeling the maybe horror or the helplessness
Yes,
or the powerlessness fully, and that was transformational in a way.
it's you see, usually when some terrifying thought, even potential rejection from woman comes into our mind right away gives us solutions. So we start analyzing these solutions, right? One of the solutions might be, oh, I need to remember this quote from Mystery or
Mm.
from Zan's book or from whatever, right? Or I need to remember what this massagist told me how to touch her, whatever, right? So in this case, your brain gives you a solution. But there is another option, right? You can just observe and like, okay, these thoughts are coming into my head. Okay. And if I'm not running, I'm stronger than these thoughts. They don't push you me to do something with this. It's not, they're not strong enough to provoke me, to poke me,
Mhm.
to make me act out of scarcity and out of fear, right? Because in this case, you act out of scarcity and fear because you want to shut down these emotions right away. But real strength is to stay with these emotions, to let yourself be there in this discomfort and uncertainty, right? Which is very rare. Not many people do that. But if you told yourself, I'm staying since, let's say, 11 p.m. till 6 a.m. on the cemetery and I'm not going to leave, you cannot do anything about that. First hours you will like, yeah, I need to do that. I need to take a gun or axe to save my ass there. But no. And yeah, just continuation of this pushing yourself to the edge or dancing with the death, as they say. It was going to the forest, and going as far as possible to the middle of the forest, so you would really feel that you might not to come back. And usually I do it at least once a year. Uh, in my the way I call it, to clean my senses, because we are polluting ourselves by being in town, by communicating to people, by experiencing their negative emotions, their negative perceptions of the world, and etc. So there is nothing healthier than to come back into our ancestors' approach, right, to life. Plus, there is many beautiful advantages as staying in the forest because you don't hear these distortions as the sounds of the cars, Instagram reels, and etc. You hear completely different pictures in that moment. In that moment, right? It's birds, it's sound of river, sound of trees. That's very fulfilling and life-changing experience. Plus, I never go there with a bunch of food or bunch of water. I drink from the river. If I find the food, great. If I won't find food, great. So yeah, I mean, it's just yes, of course, it's very masculine thing, but first of all, it's very cleaning or cleansing, how to call it,
Cleansing.
cleansing experience.
Forest. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. Because the last time I did it, it was don't want to go into details, but it was right after I found some
Yeah.
unpleasant news. I just realized that to be stronger and to maintain that situation and to stay myself and the best possible version, I need to kind of recharge and to reconnect. And there is the best way is just to put yourself into masculine archetype right away. It's just to throw it yourself into the danger, right? That's the real school of life that men need to take. How many men you know who doing that? Uh, I
Guys,
know.
Chico, they never lie.
Yeah, they do qigong, and
They do Chico.
yeah, and they quoting Cardi B, Nicki Minaj.
I remember,
Yeah,
like,
Minaj.
in September of last year, after just doing a workshop in Los Angeles and in Berlin in September, we landed in Kiev, Ukraine during wartime. It was our good friend David and I, who's on his own Latino Asian American adventures right now. Hope he's doing well and will join us soon, David. If you're watching this, you know where to find us.
Big Bad Papa.
And we had a call, and you just called me. We hadn't talked for a little bit because of 24-hour bus from Berlin to Kiev. And you said, "Hey, Justin, by the way, I won't be around for the next couple of days. I'm going to the forest with an axe and no phone." And that to me, from the suburban, academic, Asian American lifestyle that I had experienced and seen from all the children and things around me, with AP and IB is the things in the United States. That was I'd never heard of something like that in my life. It was such a foreign concept to me. And where I'm getting at with this is that initiatory, it's not like it's a new thing, Stan, right? There's this idea of sending a boy. You told me about the Spartan one, where they just
Yes, Spartans.
Agoge is what it's called, Stan.
Ag-
Where
but Agoge was completely like whole school, right? But this initiation tradition, exactly that moment, right, to send the boy into wilderness, it's existed all over the world. I bet even Mayans had it.
yeah,
But I'm more aware about Greeks, first of all, Agoge, as I mentioned, right? And the most famous was in Scandinavia. So boy needed to go to forest and kill the animal, wild animal, right? We don't say to do that and etc. Right? Don't kill animals and etc. But the way he can prove that he became a man, it's if he comes back and having instead of his coat, he would have the skin of that
the
animal.
fur.
Usually it was
Wow.
obviously wolves, but if you take as example Bjorn Ironside, Ragnar's son, right? He came back with the beard on his
Mm.
shoulders, which is it was something. He came only with axe into the forest,
There
right?
was no gun. It was an
No
axe, right?
guns. It was 4 centuries before guns been invented, right? And no even arrows because he came only with axe, and arrows cannot do anything to the bear, right? But the point is that's how he got this name, Bjorn Ironside, that even the bear couldn't stop him, right? Yeah, this initiation tradition existed long before any retreats that been invented. It was only one way because there is that edge, and the feeling of no point back, right?
Point of no return.
Point of no
Yeah.
return, right? I guess for women it's very complicated in by any means to have it, right? But we need to give a lot of gratitude and grace to women because, well, as example, during the Second World War, right, a lot of women, knowing that there is nobody who will be strong enough, because men went to war, right? They've been doing this initiation on daily basis to protect their families, to feed their children, and etc. Right? So yeah, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. When you go into the forest, into the wilderness, right? Not having water, not having food supplies, whatever, right? This is point of no return. You feel that you might not to return, but you're still going to prove yourself something. So obviously, in this case, some stage of your life is finishing, right? Ending, and starts the new chapter of your life. And this next chapter, when you will come back with some stories, or you won't,
Or you won't come back.
might happen, right? But I believe it's existed everywhere in every civilization. I definitely believe in China. You also had something similar.
Yeah, but I'm not as well studied as you are, Stan. And I should go and study that. I'm sure it was different, but also the same.
You should go to.
From boy to man. And so, what do you think is the way forward? If we don't have it, then we have to create it, Stan, in a sense. And maybe some things like this already exist. I don't know if you're aware
I
with some
think,
more.
I think in general gives a lot of courage and rush for you to take decisions that 99% of people would never take.
Yeah,
So I want to quote in this case Sappho, Greek
yeah.
poetess, right?
Sappho, lesbian Sappho.
Mhm. She
Mm-hmm.
said, "What cannot be said will be wept." So any experiences and any journeys you don't want to take, or you feel like avoiding, you will weep them one of the days of your life. There is nothing more painful and terrifying and terrible than realizing one day that you lived miserable, small, mundane life. And I think whenever you feel this call, urge to be on an adventure, to see this dance with the death, then follow this. Imagine being old, wise, 80. years old man, and his grandchildren around asking the questions. Well, Grandpa, can you tell stories of your youth? And you sharing, yeah, I've been in the forest.
Hmm.
At one moment, I saw that bear or wolves wanted to kill me. It was just a robber, buccaneers, or whatever, right? This type of stories. You don't need to have the stories that Bjorn Ironside had, Spartan boys, but still.
Well, Stan, I think of one of the greatest success stories of one of our students, and he knows who he is. And he said that he went out and was embodying this graciousness, the sexual graciousness and generosity of spirit. And he said he went and flirted with a guy that had been in jail for many years, perhaps gang affiliate, perhaps mafia, perhaps something. And he kissed this woman on the cheek. And the guy came up and approached him and said, "Hey, anyone else that touches my woman, I would have fucked up and maybe he said killed. I don't know. I wasn't there."
Mhm.
The way he recounted the story. But I can see you're a good guy. So you're good. There's this idea of flirting with danger, flirting with death. Now, sometimes it doesn't go that well, right? And human nature is human nature. And sometimes wrong place, wrong time, wrong girl. But that was an inherently transformational experience. And it wasn't like killing a bear with your bare hands in the forest. This is in the land of women. But how could you, like, what an affirmation of, wow, so people can sense, is what I would apply to his situation, that his spirit was so good that something that normally would have been offensive was like, oh, he's just having fun and making everyone else's experience better. He wasn't trying to take anything or be disrespectful. And that was an initiatory moment, I think, in his journey. And now he's actually coaching a guy for 10 days. It's going on at the time that we record this podcast in Lisbon. So a deep transformation doesn't necessarily need to take a long period of time,
Mhm.
especially when it's filled with moments like that of initiation. Stan, I'm curious if you had any close calls, if we want to get into this. Mm,
No, but yeah, I completely agree that transformation can happen very fast, and sometimes it's not even by traumatizing experiences. Usually, very overwhelming experiences might shorten the timing of this transformation, right? Or get guys closer to what they want.
yeah.
I don't know. Today I don't have any closing thoughts. No quotes, nothing. I just maybe what I would personally want, I want guys to encourage to start seeing their life. First of all, remember that this is the only life we have, right? At least we don't aware about another ones. So take it seriously. Try to maximize your experiences. Try to get the best what out of the days you have, and try to see yourself as the someone you would love and you would be proud to hear stories about. That if your friends would tell you, just imagine that there is Uganda, there is nobody that can get you back, right? And your friends are sharing with each other stories. He inspired me to do that. He was very influential to me. Well, thanks to him, I met my wife. Be that person, who changes people's lives. Be something that leaves impact on women and men in this life.
Stan, well, that was an interesting point you touched on because you can and should be inspired by the wins and the sometimes not seemingly in the moment wins, but ultimately extremely fruitful and rewarding
Mm.
experiences of your friends and your brothers. Because Stan, one of the things that comes to mind now, I remember in the summer of 2 years ago, we were working on social media things and editing videos and things like this, and You called me and you were in the hospital with a broken left hand. And you will never tell this story yourself because you're humble, right? And I'm like, what the fuck happened, man? And he said, well, I was just in the bar and there was, well, I don't know if this will stay on YouTube or not, but two guys in Lithuania were in some bar trying to rape a girl. And you went, I don't know if it was muscle memory or just pure instinct. It probably wasn't a situation that you had run into before, but something in the spirit, I don't know if it's your love for or your defensiveness or the protectiveness, not defensiveness, you have for women that just activated, and you went to go fight these guys. I don't know if you landed the punch or not. I don't remember the specific detail, but you told me that the other guy grabbed a chair and slammed it on your fucking wrist and broke your wrist, and you called me from the hospital. And then, but you were smiling for some reason, probably in a lot of pain, and saying, "Oh yeah, the girl's messaging me. She's like, thank you so much for helping me."
Yeah, and she visited me in the hospital. Yeah.
Well, I would hope so.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
That,
In this moment, you don't think about the.
just let me finish. Like that was inspiring to me as your friend. I'm like, wow, I want to be like that. I never had something like that happen, and I wonder if that happened, if I would have responded. I would have responded in a different way, maybe. But that was still like, I don't know, just to the point of being inspired by the. That's not really a win. I don't know, but your hand was broken, and But yeah, so you were saying, Stan.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. In this moment, you don't really think. You just do what you consider as the right thing to do, and that's all. There's like I think when you don't have desire to take revenge on women, you kind when you don't see women as the enemies, because I don't see men as the enemies either, right? So you just do what is right. I think in this situation, let's say if two women would try to rob the guy, with the knives and etc., I would also try to
Yeah.
save this guy's life. It wasn't
Sure.
like, oh, she's a woman and I need to protect her. Obviously,
Yeah.
it was important to do that in that moment. But I think it comes out of universal and ultimate desire to do something what is right and what's needed to be done. Maybe this is closer to the king archetype, what you mentioned before, because the difference of king and warrior archetype, warrior is doing what is right for him, king is doing what is right for his people.
Even if it's not right for him,
Exactly.
for the greater good, in a
Yeah.
sense.
And sometimes
Even if
these
he dies
archetypes
for it.
deactivating, because for the seduction is the greatest archetype is the lover archetype.
Mhm.
Woman having fantasies about you, dreaming and calling her friends and saying, I met this guy, he's cool, but he's not responding to me, he's not texting me back. It's being in magician archetype, being busy with your dramas and etc. Being the man that Miami Dubai women dreams about is being a warrior, conquering your businesses, conquering your Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and etc. And they will be attracted to that. He's a man of vision, he's a man of action. And being the king, it's having that welcoming energy when she feels safe to heal after all first three previous archetypes. I've never been considering this, but I just realized that. That's true. I think this is a great closing thought.
Yeah. And just a note on archetypes. If I remember the way I read Jung or Campbell, Joseph Campbell, or Carl Jung, that defined it as these infinite, eternal, recurring energies throughout the human condition, throughout all of history and mythology.
Yeah.
That represent certain characters, or it's like the same, the different name but the same story, sort of things. I think of a book like The Fourth Turning, where history repeats itself. No, it doesn't. History rhymes. I don't know the quote. But the idea is that these are necessary and as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago in the, like, what does it mean to be a man? That's, I think, a question that I don't think we should even try to attempt to answer in any sort of
Yeah.
depth. Maybe next episode right now. But of like, what are we here to do at this point in time, and how are we here to do what we love with the people that we love, and our role as men and protectors, and also poets, and also explorers and pirates, and whatever that specific archetype, alchemists, magicians, scientists, musicians, artists, whatever that specific path is to you. I mean, if you ask me, I would say you have to give up everything and follow that. What else is there in this life?
Mm.
Otherwise, it's a life half lived. If you knew you had this potential that you didn't go out and fight for, then how can Stan? I get a sense that you acted in that way because it would have been, let's say, worst came to worst. It would have been better to die than to live with yourself knowing that you didn't show up in that situation. Like you would never be able to forgive yourself. You didn't know the girl, right? But it wasn't even about her. It was actually still about you and her, maybe at the same time. Like there's just some sense of honor or help me phrase this. Like it was more important than life to be. Oh, you didn't talk about Alexander, actually, I think, Stan. But like, there's something more important than life to you in this life. It seemed like in that moment, it's a heroic moment. I don't know. What are your? I know we're talking about you.
You touched something interesting. I think
Yeah.
the idea of honor, it's a beautiful idea, but basically honor and dignity, unfortunately or
Yeah.
fortunately, they created by too much sensitivity towards shame, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on what the circumstances we're growing up, right? But the feeling of shame is developing, right? So at some point we becoming resentful to discuss some topics, we becoming resentful to act differently, and we becoming resentful to show up the way we don't want to see ourselves later on.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where this honor, dignity comes from, which also I think makes person unhappy and puts unrealistic expectations, you know, to the experience. For women, it manifests painfully. For men, it manifests tremendously stupidly. Maybe not so painfully because men has more attempts to do mistakes than women in our society for now, right? Even though things are switching right now and changing. But I think, in my opinion, trying to be logical and or answering on your question, it's just to do. It's just empathy for someone who needs help in that moment. That's what was activated, you know. And if I can give anyone any advice, you know, and I think it would be a great closing thought: be kinder to each other, be more empathetic to each other, because we know that what this life will end like. We know how the end of the stories of the people we encounter looks like. And one day, the person who pisses you off right now won't be here anymore. So
That's a cheerful note to end on. I'm reminded of a moment just from lived experience recently. We were at Galaxia Festival in Costinești, in Ibiru, in Romania, by the seaside. And all the other artists were playing loud music. It was festival, just picture, right? They built a whole city to party. There was one artist that came along named Salvatore Ganacci, who I'd never heard of before, and he stopped the music and just made an announcement like, "Hey, my father died this year. Shut all the speakers off. Stop playing. Give your mother or your father a call tomorrow and tell them that you love them." And it was a real 180 or a real super happy to very sad moment, but it was real. And so just you reminded me of that. stand? Like,
Yeah, it's not taking anything from you to do what is right. And usually if it feels like a difficult decision, it's the right decision.
yeah.
Sometimes we're afraid that our perception and the idea how we see ourselves will change, but apologizing to people, saying how you feel and how you would love to act differently, how you miss them, how they important are into your life, it's a beautiful thing that gives you more grace and makes you more gentle and more elegant in the eyes of other people. But we so stubborn and stuck with the idea of being strong, quote unquote, that in the end of the day, instead of being strong, we become miserable, lonely, and blaming the world for misunderstanding us.
I'm reminded of one last thing of a mutual inspiration that we have, which is Hank Moody from the show Californication. And you reminded me of a scene where Karen, his immortal beloved, yeah, you have the book right there, although it was probably better in the TV show than in real life.
Yeah, the book is there.
Yeah. Mm. And there's a scene where Hank drinks too much and takes too many pills, and basically it looks like he tried to kill himself. And him and Karen had been fighting before, but then when faced with mortality, the idea that, oh, this person might just be gone forever.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a technique or a manipulation or something to be manufactured to get out of jail free card, obviously. She was like, oh my god, like you were really going to kill yourself. Like, so there was this like a clarity that comes when you look death straight into the eyes and you see what actually matters. Now, obviously, it's hard to stay conscious and in touch with that all the time. But I think the more that you have a healthy relationship to death and view it as a natural thing that is part of life in Taoist philosophy, then I think you really will start to live more, whatever the form that is, whatever your art is, whatever your path is, whatever your journey is, where you travel, the women you date, specifically the things we explore on this channel, what your purpose is at this point in history. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a...
I can build on what you said just now.
Yeah, I'm sure to close us out, Stan. Yeah.
Chekhov said, not Mikhail Chekhov,
Anton.
not the one who invented Hollywood, even though Anton Chekhov is his uncle. Because Mikhail Chekhov, he was the most influential person in actors industry, and he mostly invented the Hollywood, right? But Anton Chekhov, the writer, his uncle, he said, whenever you ask yourself, do you love this person or not? Ask yourself, what would I do if this person would come tomorrow?
Probably different than the momentary, irrational, emotional response of them pissing you off or whatever.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The old must die for the new to be born. So thank you guys for listening to this week. Again, I'll make an invitation to everyone. In about less than 2 weeks' time, we're commencing Adventure Zero, our first pirate ship adventure in Bucharest. Well, not just Bucharest, in Romania, in different cities all over Romania. It's going to start in Bucharest. We'll go to Cluj. Then we'll go back to Bucharest and Valneveke, then Bucharest. If those names don't mean anything to you, I'll leave a link below. You can find more information on this, but this is the lived version of this conversation. Don't just listen to the stories that we tell. Come and be a part of the next one. And without saying more, we have nothing to sell. We're living this adventure anyways. And we have more exciting destinations to be announced for later this year, but that is the very next one, Adventure Zero. Come for the founders tier. That'll never happen again. So, anything else to add, Stan?
Nope.
Okay, take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.